What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 5th episode of Criterion Corner. Today we're going to be talking about Monsieur Hulot's Holiday from 1953, written and directed by Jacques Tati. And I've got my regular, but still very incredible co-host here, Connor Nielsen, to join me as always to share our thoughts on this film. We've both watched it, and we're going to discuss it together for the first time. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing very well. It is June when we are recording this, so it feels very fitting, very festive to be talking about a vacation film.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to go ahead and jump into that. So this film was not one that me and Connor were talking about like all the other ones have been. This has, or it wasn't a recommendation from either of us, even though this film was on my radar, and I was considering watching it pretty soon and picking up the Jacques Tati box set that Criterion has, but this was actually recommended by one of our viewers, Connor, which was really cool. Eric Zayman, if I'm saying that right, left a wonderful comment on the Passion of Joan of Arc video. He said, regarding recommendations for future videos on the subject of silent comedies, referencing the Chaplin discussion that we had, and French films, which we've been talking about a lot, may I suggest watching one of Jacques Tati's Monsieur Hulot movies? Criterion has released all of Tati's films, although I don't know if they are on the Criterion channel. They are. That's where we both watched it. And he says, here's my pitch for them. While they were made in the 50s and 60s, they're virtually no dialogue and are functionally silent comedies. And incidentally, very wholesome. So he thought I would like them because I like a lot of wholesome stuff. He recommended that we start with Monsieur Hulot's Holiday from 1953 for the reason that Connor just mentioned. He thought it would be perfect to get us in the mood for summer right as we're going into summer on this 5th episode. So I agreed with him, and I ran it by Connor, and Connor said, let's do it. So that's why we're talking about the movie today. Thank you so much for that recommendation. If you guys have any other recommendations for movies that we should try, go ahead and put them in the comments below, and we may pick one of yours for an upcoming video. Also, like and subscribe if you like these kind of videos, and we're going to keep making them because I like having these great discussions with you, man. And thanks again for coming back. Just introductory thoughts. What are your thoughts? Going into this, like, what were you expecting? What did you know about it? I said it was on my radar. Had you been familiar with his films at all?
No, actually. I had seen the name around. I knew that this was an early film in the collection. This is actually Spy number 110. It's available, of course, because the Criterion put out the complete Jacques Tati set. I did not know he was an actor. I did not know Monsieur Hulot was this sort of basically a bridge between Charlie Chaplin's Tramp character and Mr. Bean. Mm-hmm. I didn't know really anything about this. And honestly, the comment that you had read, I had read that when it was left by the commenter. And that was really the first context or anything of any substance that I had heard regarding Jacques Tati.
Yeah,
so
he really sold it. I didn't read the whole comment, but he went on, and he even talked about all of his films after this one, and he sold me like that. He really got me excited to check it out. So thanks again for that comment.
So I would say, like, regarding my opinions on the movie, it was an interesting viewing experience because this week has been sort of this movie was perfectly timed.
Nice.
Like in terms of like when we're watching this. A couple of days ago, my little brother just graduated high school, and I've been going to graduation parties because his friends, like I kind of know them sort of by proxy, so I kind of end up going to those graduation parties. And so this feeling of summer's in the air. It's been rainy in the Northwest for like a while, but it's really started clearing up lately, and the sun's out late, and I just all of a sudden that pre-COVID feeling of summertime has sort of been creeping back into my life. I hadn't felt this feeling in years, honestly, and it's been this really cathartic, wonderful feeling. And this movie is a distillation of vacation. I don't really know another way of putting it. What I think, if I just had to give it just like a 1 to 2 sentence summary of it, it's not like this amazing movie, I don't think. It's not trying to be, though. And that's what I think kind of gives it probably its super likable edge. Mm-hmm. And why I'll probably remember it is that while you're watching it, it's kind of aimless. It's freewheeling. It's a bunch of little moments that you don't necessarily see the overall significance of, and there really isn't any, but it gives you this feeling, this relaxed sensation, and it's so affable and likable, like its central character. And at the end of the day, isn't that what summertime is? Isn't that what vacation is? You remember the feeling more than you remember the moments, but it is nothing but a series of moments. So I would give it a thumbs up, and I'm glad I watched it. And in terms of this series we've been doing, this is out of the 5 videos we've done, this is the 4th French film. And I think this has been great because I think all the ones we've been talking about are pre-French New Wave. And it's just been really cool to see how diverse an offering you get when you go and look at these very old French films.
Yes. So I had a very similar experience. I was very interested to know what you would think of this movie because it's basically your favorite genre, or one of your favorite genres of movie. It's basically just a hangout movie. Like, we get to sit with the same people. Like, we get to know them. We see them over and over. I'm really glad I watched this again. Full disclosure, I did see it twice. I watched it once very late at night, and I gotta say I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. And I probably would give it a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd if I was rating it on that viewing. I don't do those because Connor will see them, and I don't want to reveal anything until we discuss it in person. But then I just rewatched it last night with my son because this is something that a lot of people have recommended to show your children because they're very wholesome, and he really enjoyed it. And I also, independently from him, enjoyed it a lot more, but he also added some to it, and I think I would bump it up a whole star. Like, I think I would give it 4 stars. Even though, like you said, it's not trying to, like, blow your socks off, but that's where I try to, like, rate things based on what they're trying to do. And like you said, it nails everything it's trying to do. And I don't think I want to hold against it that it wasn't trying to, like, have this huge message or make me cry my face off or something with, like, huge emotional consequences from the characters. It's just so charming, man. I don't know. Charming is like the perfect word, I think, that I could describe it. Very fun, and like I said, I'm really glad I watched it again. Right off the bat, I wanted to talk about, because there's an opening note. Did you read that opening note?
I did, yes.
Okay, so we both watched it on the channel. First of all, you have the channel.
You've scored another victory against me, DJ.
The Criterion streaming service, if you're not familiar, we've talked about it a bunch. But yeah, I finally got Connor to hop on. Was it just because of this movie, or did you finally just want to do it anyway?
It was honestly because of this. When I was in Atlanta, in October, we talked about Diabolique. You and your wife were showing me the Criterion channel and showing me, like, oh, there's these cool collections and there's all this and that. And I'm like, oh, wow, they're very neat. Yeah. And we've been trying to figure out what movies we need to talk about. And I wouldn't be surprised if you were scheming and you were thinking, okay, now that I have access to Connor's list of movies that he owns in Criterion, how do I pick one that he doesn't have, that is available on the channel? That now, that being said, I could have watched this on HBO Max, and if any viewers do not have Criterion channel, cool. This is available on HBO Max. However, they only have the 88-minute version of it. I wanted to get Criterion channel anyways because I wanted to watch, at least familiarize myself with a little bit of the original 1953 version and watch some of the bonus features, which I did.
Nice.
Because I don't have access to the disc, and I do like being familiar with not just the film, but some of the context surrounding it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. We'll talk about the bonus features in a second. I only watched one because the other two were kind of just Tati in general, and they were like showing a lot of clips from his other films, so I held off on those ones. But one of them is a fantastic video essay on just this film, and I learned a lot from that. But like I said, the film starts with an opening, not a crawl, just like a text blurb on the screen that says that this restoration was very hard because the film was damaged due to how many times the director went back and edited it, which I thought was fascinating. So we can talk about that phenomena a little bit because I know that's very, very frowned upon these days, and most people get very angry when directors do that. Looking at you, Lucas, but I'm not against that, honestly. I don't know how you feel on that. I guess we can talk about it briefly. As an artist myself, and I know you're a filmmaker too, like, I totally understand the need to, or at least the feeling that you have, especially if you're a perfectionist like I am, and like Tati definitely seems to be, where he felt like a work was never finished, and he felt like he had to keep going back and making it better. Obviously, that can be problematic if you erase the original versions, like is the case with George Lucas. But I think as long as you make all the versions available to the public so they can have their version, like Ridley Scott. I mean, how many freaking edits are there of Blade Runner?
Yeah, it's a discussion I'm glad we're having, because this is almost a continuation of what we were talking about last time in terms of The Passion of Joan of Arc. There isn't a set, we don't really know of a set playback speed at 20 frames per second, 24 frames per second, some other frame rate.
But one very distinct difference between that conversation and this one that I like is that was not his fault. Other people were editing his film against his will most of the time, and this one was his choice. So there are 3 different edits of the film. The most recent, there's 1953, 1962, and 1978, and the most recent is his intended version, and that's why they restored that one. I, just like last time, think that my perfect version is the one that's not available. I think the 1962 version is my perfect version. I don't know if that one's on the box set. It's not on the channel. They only have the 53 theatrical and the restored 1978, which I think is a bummer, because the only big difference between 78 and 62 is he adds a gag that did not work for me at all and is basically just a parody because he saw Jaws a couple years before that. And I didn't like it. I think I would really like the 62 version. I think that would be my perfect one, but I don't know if I'll ever see it.
Well, and the discussion is interesting, because I think in the case of Tati, it's a sort of perfectionist thing that you don't really see artists do when they get free reign. You know, when you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League, he basically made a 4-hour movie. It's all of it. When you look at George Lucas's special edition of Star Wars, he adds scenes back in. When you look at Tati with this movie, however, it's 12 minutes shorter, the 78 intended version, compared to the 53 original version. And I think that's kind of interesting. He is very probably, in terms of being a perfectionist, a kill your darlings type filmmaker, and you don't really see that. A lot of the time, being a filmmaker and being a director, especially if you're the actor-director, it's almost like you're almost seen as a self-indulgent presence, and this is very much the opposite. I, however, did not know. I'm glad you brought up that gag with the boat chomping like a shark is added, because I guess what I should say when I was watching it, I watched a little over half of the original 53 version, and because I just could not stay awake, not because of this movie being boring or whatever, I just working long hours at work currently, so I didn't have enough time to finish it, and I wanted to probably watch the Criterion Collection Spy number 110. The version that is in the Criterion Collection is the 78 intended edit. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to be familiar with that one. So it was interesting to kind of compare and contrast. I have not seen all 12 minutes that are out of it, though, but I was aware of a lot that is missing now. And I think it is kind of cool to compare them. But however, you did watch the 12 extra minutes. Am I correct?
Like I said, I was going to ask, I'm very happy that you did that, by the way, because normally you're Mr. Stickler and you want to watch the first version first. I was like, I hope you didn't do that
exactly. That's really, like, I'm honestly kind of kicking myself that I didn't watch in their entirety both versions.
So I did not do that, but I did. If you watch that video essay done by the gentleman who, I wish I would have written down his name because it's really good. He mentions all the gags that were cut out, all the scenes that were cut out. So I did watch the modern restored version from 78 twice, and then I did go back and just watch the scenes from the theatrical version that were cut. He cuts several jokes. He cuts a whole other tennis match. There's actually a tennis match in the beginning where he gets destroyed, and then later when he learns his magic serve from the lady who sells him the tennis racket and no one can touch him. And also there's like an extended part of that scene where there's just like a priest that's dozing off. Honestly, I don't miss any of the scenes. I think he was right for most of it. There is one scene at the very end that I wish he had kept in, and it's only like a couple seconds. I don't know why he cut it, but yeah, that's why I think the 62 version so if you don't know, we're just all over the place and we're talking about some little details before we even talk about the film at all, so this is probably not interesting to anyone, but I gotta put timestamps. The first version, he cut out 3 main scenes, and like you said, it's like 12 minutes, and then I'm sure there's a little bit of stuff here and there, but 3 main scenes. And the big thing about the 1962 version is he changed the score. He got a new score put in, which makes it so good, by the way. That's why I'm glad you watched it, because I think the score in this is incredible. I love it. I've been listening to it for the last couple days, and it is going to go straight on my scores playlist with all of my other groovy 1960s music, like Zazie Dans La Metro and Placido and all the music I've been actually listening to lately, because that's kind of what mood I'm in. It's a really good score, and that's why I think the 62 version is perfect. The 78 version came out right after he saw Jaws, and he inserts like a joke that I actually thought was really good and one of my favorite gags. Then he inserts like another part of it that didn't work for me, just because he liked Jaws and thought that would be really funny if there was a shark gag and everyone ran away. But it's like different costumes, and it's clearly shot very much later, and even before I knew that, it was a gag that didn't work for me. So I kind of wish I had the 62 version in some way to watch, but whatever, it's just a 1-minute scene. But yeah, that's interesting that that's just an interesting conversation. I'm sure we'll have that a lot as we go through the Criterion catalog. I don't know how many have been edited like this, but a lot of them have been edited against their will, like Passion of Joan of Arc. So
now, when we were you saw this before I did, and you had actually initially expressed some worry that we wouldn't have enough to talk about here. Now, why on earth you would ever think you and I talking to each other would ever be less than an hour, I will never know. But
I should have known we could have rambled forever. Mostly we talk about story and stuff, so that's why this one, where there is not really a through story, it's more based on the situational gags and the caricatures. That's what I was thinking. But you actually came up with a really cool idea to fill some time, which we'll get to a little bit later, counting down a top 5 of each of our favorite gags. So stay tuned for that, and we'll let you know. It's going to be really weird just like explaining jokes to you, because it's not going to be funny at all. But we'll share those mostly just to each other, because I'm interested to see which ones you like the best. But yeah, I'm not worried anymore after watching it again. I think we'll definitely have plenty to talk about to fill out this episode. So if you're hoping for a short one, sorry, because we don't know how to do short videos apparently.
Well, this is a long-form discussion show anyways, so they should know what they're getting themselves in for when they see the timestamp. What do you want to get into with this? I know I could think of 3 or 4 different things off the top of my head, but why don't you start?
Let's talk about his style briefly. Maybe not briefly. So what you hear all the time is that, or not all the time, what we heard from that one commenter, because we didn't know much about these movies, and then I've heard subsequently after that, is that he's basically making silent comedies. And that's what I would have said after the first viewing. But after the second viewing, I kind of I don't disagree with that, but I don't think it's wholly true. I think it's kind of a misconception, because while Hulot himself doesn't speak ever, by the way, we haven't said that. He doesn't speak at all, except for like kind of like Mr. Bean, like you said. It makes like little noises or mumbling. But there's a lot of dialogue in the movie, but most of it is background dialogue. I don't know if you noticed that. A lot of it doesn't even get subtitled. But people are yelling to each other. You can hear people talking all like the whole time at the beach. Everyone's talking and having a good time, but I think it's mostly just what the main character doesn't speak, and that so much of the comedy is derived from physical comedy, I would say. I don't know if there's any. Is there any jokes that aren't slapstick?
I'll have to think about that. I want to say there is, but that's just kind of instinctively, but I can't think of any.
Yeah. Either way, the overwhelming majority is slapstick. That's what he's a master of. He's incredible at it. I didn't even know that he was the main actor until after I saw it the second time. I guess I didn't read the credits at the beginning, but I wasn't aware that he basically is Charlie Chaplin, because he writes, he directs, he stars. It's a regular 50s Stallone.
Does he do the score? No, he does not.
No,
but
he doesn't do the score. Chaplin does, though. Yeah. No one's a Chaplin. Chaplin is insane. Chaplin sings the songs, and it's crazy.
Yeah, so I guess maybe we should like kind of give a framework of like, this doesn't really have a plot to it. It's more about creating a feeling. But the general framework we're given here is it's summertime, it's vacation time in France, and everyone leaves the city to go to the beach. And while they're at the beach, there is this one boarding house that we really zero in on. This is where Monsieur Hulot is staying. And while there is a woman named Martine, who is a bit of the romantic interest.
Yeah,
and,
a little bit. And we actually are we're introduced to Hulot like long before we realize that that's who it is. Like we just see a car driving for a long time. And then when we get to the hotel, we follow her.
Yes.
Like she's like the first character we follow her upstairs and she's unpacking and stuff. Like, and I thought she was going to be a much bigger part than she was.
Yeah, and even earlier on, like we're following her getting on the bus before we even see Mr. Hulot's car. And so while who was also here, we have the sort of the patron, the kind of the person who is in the proprietor, the person who is in charge of this boarding house. We have an elderly couple that is sort of just wandering around leisurely. There is a nuclear family where the father is always waiting for a phone. We have an American or I guess an English woman who is staying there, and she speaks English. And then we have the one woman who is friends with Martine. She arrives late and is always complaining about something. There's just a bunch of little characters that show up throughout. These two little kids, one of which who's always causing trouble, one of which who is always being turned around by the proprietor. We have
You've got the old man who's always talking about the things he did in the war.
The old captain, that is correct. We even get like a sort of communist philosopher man.
Yeah, I was trying to flirt with the girl and she's not having it.
I would be shocked if the Timothée Chalamet character from The French Dispatch is not based on this character. They look like the same.
I was getting French Dispatch vibes from this, man. This is clearly that era, and obviously it's France, and it's got the same kind of jazzy score. One more thing I want to say about the score is I love the choice to have it play throughout the film in universe. It's playing constantly. Like people will put on a record, and then the score will play, and people will be playing an instrument, and they'll be playing the score. There's even a kid whistling at one point the score. I love when films do that. I think that's a really cool choice. I like the score, so it didn't bother me. If I didn't like the score, I probably wouldn't like it as much. It added to the whole feel. Like it's just this big community. Like you, I mean, I just love all the different. And that's the second viewing really sent that home. Like the first viewing, I wasn't really keeping track of everybody at the beginning. Like obviously by the end I was, but right from the gate with the second viewing, I was like, okay, I already know these people. I feel like I've been here before, and I could really keep track of all the stories. I think this is definitely one that merits rewatching because it came into place a lot better for me the second time.
I'm glad that you said that, because when I was watching this, the 53 theatrical cut, I was a little like, because I was nodding off. I was like, wait, hold on, where are we? Who are these people or whatever? And when I decided to just watch the restored version, I did begin to appreciate, what we're doing with like the little characters throughout. And I guess the kind of the central character, Mr. Hulot, is this, he's a goofball. He's almost, I would actually compare him to like a Hanna-Barbera character who sort of shows up and, sort of messes things up, not on purpose. And sometimes the way he messes things up, causes like a Rube Goldberg machines type gag. And sometimes that benefits somebody at the expense of somebody else. Sometimes it just ruins everybody's enjoyment. Sometimes it's an accident that just makes everybody happy. And it's a bit of a repetitive movie where it is very much like a week in these people's lives. We get meal bells every so often. And I think the score is actually reflective of that, where this is the soundtrack of this point in time. And this is what it just sort of sounds like. And what I like about the musical score is it has a sort of Randy Newman quality to it. I was actually reminded of the Monsters Incorporated score listening to this.
Yeah. And, it's very much that jazzy. It's really, I really like it. But no, I think what sets him apart from a lot of those other like Jacques Clouseau kind of clumsy, annoying characters is he's so perpetually a nice guy. Like he's always helping he's always helping someone. It's evidenced by the very first scene very early on. I don't know if it's like the ice cream man, but I don't know why he's got this like dough that he has to keep kneading.
It's like taffy or something.
Yeah, it's some kind of candy, and he's hanging it over his cart, and it's like gravity's just pulling it down, and it's about to touch the ground, and Hulot can't he can barely control himself because he wants to help so bad, and he's like over here, and he's like, oh, this is gonna fall, and then like the guy catches it, and then he puts it back up, and it goes again, and he's like, and then he catches it again. Like, he has to help people. Like you said, the one woman who got there late, he like helps her unpack her bags, brings them into her house, like for no reason. He's on vacation too, but he just goes and helps her. There's this couple of women who go hiking, and he just offers to like carry her big heavy hiking backpack for her for no. He's just always helping people. And then he sometimes like will drop their luggage out the window or trip and knock everybody over. But his heart's in the right place, and that's where I think that charm comes from with him.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the difference between someone like the Tramp and Mr. Hulot is that, or Monsieur Hulot, whatever, the English woman calls him Mr., so I'm going to call him Mr.
Yeah.
So what we have is, the Tramp is just a big-hearted, hopeless romantic, and,
Yes.
Mr. Hulot is also a bit of a romantic, but he's still a goofball in the romantic scenes. And while we do kind of root for him, we're not, I don't think, meant to see ourselves in him as an adult. But like the Tramp, there's like a childlike innocence throughout, in terms of when you get older, you kind of lose those feelings of childhood, right? Like when you're on vacation is kind of work. You know what I mean? Like you have to plan it all.
Absolutely. That's what that's the whole point of the movie is like, and no one else, he's the only one who's able to relax. Everyone else is just as stressed if they're at work. You said the guy who's getting phone calls like every other hour. I like the joke where he's lounging on a float, or he's floating on his back in the ocean, and the guy's like, you have a phone call, and he like just freaks out and starts swimming, but he starts swimming the wrong way, which wasn't that funny. But then the guy's like, no, at the hotel. Like the way he delivered that, instead of like saying you're going the wrong way, he was just like, no, it's at the hotel. That made me laugh. But yeah, no one else is relaxing. Got the woman complaining the whole time. The parents are getting on to the kids. Like he's the only one. The kids are relaxing, but like you said, he's got that childlike wonder that comes back at the end when everyone is like, no one will speak to him at the end. Everyone's had it with him at the end. Like everyone's done with him, and he's like cast down to the dunes to just sit with the kids. And you think it's kind of it's kind of a sad ending, but then you get, like you said, the American woman coming down and just like thanking him so much because he made her week. Like it was incredible. She wants to come back next year. She wants him to come back. Because he just cheered her up so much. And then another character, which we'll talk about later, also comes up to him. But no, I totally agree with what the movie's saying about, I think it's commenting on the fact that losing that childlike wonder is a bad thing.
Yeah, and what I think is cool though is like if I was curious to know how your son felt about it, because if you're a kid watching this, it's almost like a power fantasy where you're like, I get to be Mr. Hulot and I get to do the things that adults can do because I'm big and I'm old enough to like go and do things, right? Where I don't have supervision, I can be all by myself, but he's still like a kid. And as an adult, you watch it and it almost makes you feel nostalgic where you're like, why can't I be a little bit more like this guy? You know, because if your heart's in the right place. So that's what I think is kind of the fun thing that this guy, Tati's character, has, because, you know, you have Charlie Chaplin's Tramp, and I think kids maybe want to grow up to be like him, or like, but they still see him as an adult, probably because he's got the mustache, and you know he gets into like some pretty serious situations that
he's
you know
in
you
prison, he's working at a factory.
You don't want to be stood up on New Year's Eve, all right, by Georgia, okay? But
Spoiler
kids want to
alert.
be Mr. Bean, right? They see Mr. Bean as themselves, and Mr. Hulot is a really solid, I think, in between where there is an adult aspect to it and there is a childlike aspect to it, where I think Chaplin is much more the adult and Rowan Atkinson's Mr. Bean is much more the child. I think this is a cool in between.
Mm-hmm. So real quick, you asked me a while back how my son liked it. We got off on a little bit of a tangent, but yeah, he really enjoyed it. This is actually the first film I let him stay up past his bedtime to watch. His bedtime
Aww, that's adorable.
His bedtime is 8:00, and I've been feeling bad lately because he's just kind of lays in his bed for like an hour. Like I don't think he needs that much sleep. I think if he goes to bed at 9, he'd be okay. He's about to turn 4, and I feel bad just leaving him in his room for like an hour every night before he finally falls asleep. So I was like, I'll let him out. I'll let him out. I'll let him hang out with me because I have to watch this movie again anyway, because we were going to do the top 5 favorite gags. So I needed to take some notes on the second viewing to keep track of those. And he sat on the couch, watched the whole thing with me. I'm sure like he didn't catch everything because he is only 3 years old, but he sat on the couch and he never said, I want to go upstairs or like, I want to go to bed. He just watched the whole thing with me. And I'm glad he did because the ending is the part I knew he would love the most. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I think that is one of the best scenes and I'm glad he got to see it. But he laughed a good amount of times. There was several of the gags that he laughed pretty hard at. So that's basically what you can expect from this movie. I think it is a very wholesome family film, and even very young kids. Like I said, my son's only 3, but he enjoyed it. So I think you can show them this pretty early. He also already has seen a lot of Méliès and the Tramp films with some Charlie Chaplin, so he's prepared for silent films. But yeah, he enjoyed it, and like I said, it enhanced my viewing and my enjoyment of it on the second viewing too.
Awesome. I'm happy to hear that. And that's adorable. I'm glad. I don't know. I like hearing those kinds of stories where it was the first movie he got to stay up past his bedtime to watch.
Yeah, and I'm very interested in getting the box set now so I can check out the rest of his movies. I guess I can save that for closing thoughts, but I'll sneak it in here. But anyway, I mentioned the gags. So like I said, Connor had a great idea to kind of count down our top 5. So we'll go ahead and do that here, and then we'll probably bounce around, and this will probably spur on some conversation. But we're going to go 5 to 1. Favorite gags. Now, for me, this might not be the top 5 that made me laugh the most, but on reflection, after thinking about it, I think these are like my 5 like most perfectly crafted gags. At least for me. I don't know how you structured it, but I'll let you go ahead and start with your number 5.
All right. I think my number 5 is a short one, and it's very small, and it's off the top. I like it when the proprietor of the boarding house, a vacation home that all these people are staying in, he has a slab of meat that he is cutting. And a woman is walking in, and he's in the middle of kind of cutting a nice sliver off of this prime rib or whatever it is as she walks in. And then right after her, a very large gentleman walks in, and you see him move the knife. You see him about to cut another like smaller cut, and then he stops cutting. And he moves it over to cut a bigger slice. And that was a nice little gag that I thought did a good job of, what we got there is composition and blocking, where you have a set subject kind of in the foreground of the side of the man's arm as he is cutting. You see the knife, you see the meat, you see his arm cutting. And then you have on the right side of the frame, you have this sort of revolving door of people coming in and stopping for a moment and then continuing. And it does a good job of knowing where the audience will be looking. I found that to be a nice little gag. And I wanted to make a note of that because there are kind of these gags that sort of start stacking on top of one another and building and building and building. And I wanted to let the audience know that if you haven't seen this, there are fun little gags along the way and not just these big memorable set pieces.
Yeah, you don't have to. This could be. I could see this being a movie that you just have on in the background at like a party or something, or while people are over, and you turn and you see something that's funny instead of having to have watched every single thing add up. There is some of that as the movie progresses, but there, especially in the beginning, there's some funny little one-off gags. Mine is a one-off gag for my number 5. It is when they're on the beach and there is a whole group of people exercising. And that's funny in itself because the 50s, the way people exercise is hilarious. They're doing all these like goofy aerobic stretches in these like one leotard with like stripes on them. And it starts off with like an overhead shot. You see all of the participants and the coach. Then it goes to just the participants with the seaside behind them. And they go into like a little, like a deep squat with their legs completely out to the side. And they're holding it, and they keep holding it, and you see them like straining, and one guy's like holding his hat, and they're like starting to twitch, and you have no idea why they're holding it for so long. And then of course you pan over, and the coach is handing back Hulot's net to him, so you don't even get to see what he did, but somehow he probably hit the coach or something. And that's why I wanted to put this here, because there's a lot of gags in here that are not necessarily set up and payoff, but are kind of like payoff, and then you get to see the setup. In particular, the one where the guy is painting the name of the boat on the boat, and then all of a sudden the boat just shoots off into the lake, and he streaks a big paint streak across it, and then you turn over and the winch is just spinning, and you have no idea who messed with the winch, because this is very early on in the film, and we don't know that he's just going to be screwing everything up over and over. So everyone else gets blamed for it, and then you finally look over and he's like super guilty, and he runs away with the guy jogging, trying to do like a stretch, which was also funny. But there's a lot of that kind of stuff where, maybe not a lot, but there's a good amount peppered in where, like I said, it's kind of reversed. You see what Hulot has done after you've seen the aftermath of it, which I thought was interesting and pretty funny.
I agree. That was a good one. And I think you talking about how you get a payoff and then you realize what the setup was a few times. That's actually what I kind of took the taffy to be. Because that first time, you notice him looking at the taffy and he looks like he's transfixed by it. And he like wants to do, and I'm thinking, what's the joke here? Like, I don't get it. Does he want to eat it? Does he not have money? What's the deal? And then later in the movie, you find out that, like, you know, I think the aftermath of a funny sequence, a man is stuck in his trunk and he is guilty and he is running away. And then one of the people to go help the man out of the trunk is the taffy puller man who serves ice cream. And he's trying to hide and he notices the taffy falling and he keeps, he's stopping it.
Even though he's at his own risk of being found, he still can't help. But I don't know if that's just OCD or if he really wants to save it. I don't know what it is, but that's when I finally realized what the joke was originally, and it gave me that sense of setup and payoff. Except it was kind of a payoff and then a setup, because now I know what he wants to do with his hands, and so I liked that. My number 4 is actually a gag that was cut from the restored version. It's in the 1953 original, and it's a pretty early gag. There's a moment where he walks in and into the dining area, and this one woman says hello, and then he kind of smiles at her, and then he turns around and looks at the mirror, and then he starts like making these faces in the mirror. And what happens is the sort of man in charge of, I have a lot of gags involving him actually, the sort of Larry of the Three Stooges type guy who walks in. And he's noticing Hulot looking in the mirror, and he's like, starts imitating his facial movements that you're seeing in the mirror. So you have this sort of double-pronged thing where Hulot is looking in the mirror, making faces, and is unaware of this man imitating him doing this. And the way it is kind of funny, where you see the reflection of it, and then you see the reflection a second time. Now, the reason this is even on my list at all is because I relate to this very hard, a lot. I relate to this a lot because when I was a kid, I loved looking at myself in the mirror and making goofy faces like this and just seeing, what can my face do? And, I saw myself in that. But then as I've gotten older, it became a joke between my brother and I, where if we're bored and we're both eating, I will be looking at my brother eating and I will start imitating him taking bites and chewing, and I'll just do it until he notices it and it'll bother him, and then vice versa. Sometimes I'll be eating, and if I got to get my mouth around a really big chip when I'm eating nachos or something, my brother will do an impression of me. I don't know. I felt that was a very relatable gag. I can understand why it was cut, but I wanted to make a special mention of that. And considering where it is in the movie, I kind of would have expected that to not have been cut. But I think where he was maybe coming at it from was there's a lot of scenes in this dining area, and we should probably get away from it because we're going to have another scene here pretty soon anyways. There's other stuff to maybe showcase. I'm not sure why he would have cut it, but that's, if I had to wager a guess, that would be it. Yeah, that's interesting. So my number 4 is kind of a group of a couple quick gags. It's the scene, I'm gonna call it living room antics. It's the scene where he's waiting for the young woman to come downstairs. It's after they've already kind of had a connection, and he goes over and they're gonna go horseback riding, and she's upstairs getting ready, and he's just like Larry David downstairs in the living room, just like messing with things. The very first thing he does is sit down in a chair, and he has like boots on with spurs, and he rests his feet on the ground on the spurs, and it rolls and it slips out, and he just like falls right out of the chair, which is, you know, classic slapstick, kind of an easy joke, but that was the hardest my son laughed the entire time, when he just slid right out of the chair onto the ground. But then what I liked better was right after that, he has like his rider's crop with him because they're about to go horseback riding, and he's like, he's going around fixing the crooked paintings on the wall, and then he tucks it back under his arm, leans back, and like messes up another painting right behind him, and then like turns around and looks at that one and messes up this one, and he's trying to like fix things, and he keeps messing things up. The fox rug gets his mouth caught on his spur of his foot and freaks him out. But my favorite one is he knocks over the candle out of the candlestick, and just then the young woman's like mother, it comes down, and he's like, oh, and he just shoves it. He sticks his riding crop in the candlestick, and it's just shooting straight up. He finally gets the candlestick back in, and he's trying to like hold it up because there's a guy sleeping right here, and then he finally gets it right up, and he flips his riding crop. He finally gets it back up, and he flips it. I just hit it twice. He finally gets the candle back upright, and he flips his hands under his arm with his riding crop, and he like Mask of Zorro slits the candle right in half anyway, and he just has to run out. Those are some of his more destructive, but they were just so quick and unexpected. Like I was not expecting him to just the candlestick in after he spent so much time getting it back in there. So that was a funny scene. I think came together pretty well.
That was very good. My favorite is where he notices the fox is attached to his spur, and he quickly yanks it off. But you're right, the payoff where he is taking all this time to get the candlestick upright and then knocks it over anyway without knowing it is a great payoff. My number 3 is a little moment involving the elderly couple that is just kind of strolling around, where you have, first of all, a lot of this, I'd say half of it, takes place in this boarding house, this vacation home where a lot of people are staying. And I really like the sets there. I like the way that looks, but it's the seaside venue. And we get a lot of very scenic, lovely shots of this shore and the rocks and the little boardwalk and the lighthouse. And it's quite beautiful, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like, it looks very scenic, and I guess we can talk about like the way this movie leaves off is just perfect. And my favorite gag involving the
was added later was not the whole postcard thing was not in the original. It just said fiend like usual. Okay.
So my favorite gag involving the beach involves the elderly couple, where the man has a hat and a cane, and he always is using his cane to keep his head on as he's just strolling around, and his wife's strolling around with him, and they're on the beach. She keeps on looking down, picking up seashells and saying, my, look at this beautiful seashell. Here, keep it. And then the husband grabs it and then just tosses it away. And you hear it off screen like plump, like sinking. And then she'll pick up another seashell and say, this one is beautiful too. Here you go. And then he just grabs it, and without even really, like, he'll maybe look at it for a second and then throw it away. And that's, again, just a small gag. I found it very, very funny myself.
Yeah.
And it makes good use of the beach location, mm-hmm. I think.
So my number 3 was not one that I laughed at originally. I don't even think I got it or noticed it the first time. But the second time, it hit me a lot better. And this is one of those things where it's like something that I deal with a lot, and it's an inside joke for myself. The train station scene, the very opening of the film. The film opens with credits over like the nice beach, seaside, like you were just talking about, the gorgeous views, and then it immediately cuts to like this madness of people just at a train station running around. It's kind of like that scene in Modern Times where it cuts from the sheep and then immediately cuts to the factory workers, drawing the mm-hmm. connection there. It's kind of like that, where it's like but this is the exact opposite of the nice calm waves coming up on the beach, and the people are just hustling and bustling, and it starts with the mother smacking her son in the face because he almost steps out in front of a car. But at the train station, you've got the voice coming over the loudspeaker, and I guess because it was in French the first time, I didn't pick up on this, but the second time, it's clearly like this garbled voice, and like nobody can understand what he's saying. and it's this train station where the trains can come in from either side. There's 2 tracks, and the stairs go under, and you come back up on the other side, and they have no idea where to go because they can't understand the voice, and so they think that they're supposed to come on this side, and the whole mob runs down the stairs and comes up on the other side, and the train comes over here, and then they run back down and come over here, but the train just keeps going, and then the other train comes back on this side, so they're all going back again. Like it's pretty funny. I think he accomplished it with 2 completely different crowds of extras dressed identically because they come down so fast. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah.
You're not waiting for them to come all the way across. It's just like it's like a cartoon, and that's really funny. I mean, you're gonna experience this in a couple weeks when you come to see me. I can never understand the captain in the airplane. Like, you know, I'm like, why? What are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. So that resonated with me, and also after watching that video essay, realizing a lot more what the film was saying that went over my head the first time. This sets up from the very beginning his emphasis on communication visually through faces and body language, and how he's commenting on how language can be confusing and not maybe the most effective way to communicate, and makes perfect sense from like a guy who's literally a master of slapstick and physical comedy. So right out the gate, the verbal communication is just a mess and no one's understanding it, and then you're going to watch the rest of the film where you just get to experience Hulot not communicating with words at all, and he just conveys everything through his body and his facial expressions. So that was really cool, and that keeps coming back. Like you said, the couple who is just kind of meandering around, the husband's not enjoying it at all. They're never speaking to each other. They're like, they've been married for like so many decades that they're not even speaking, and you could take that 1 or 2 different ways. Like a lot of couples, when you've been together so long, you don't have to speak, like you're kind of beyond that. Or it could be like a further running with that idea of miscommunication and how they're just in this kind of melancholy spot in their relationship where they're not talking. And I lean more towards that because it's made very clear that the husband's not enjoying himself at all. Whenever he's with his wife, he seems kind of miserable, and then whenever he's with Hulot or watching Hulot, he perks up and he's smiling and laughing. And I think that's just further commenting on what Tati thinks physical comedy can bring.
Yeah, no, that's a good observation. It's not in one of my gags, but I made a note of it. There's a scene involving the old man kind of watching Hulot dance that I thought was kind of lovely, and we can talk about that a little later. My number 2 is now I'm pulling out the big stuff. My number 2 is a really, I think, remarkable gag that I think probably took a lot of specific timing and craftsmanship to make look natural, but when you watch it, it's so laid back. And that is where he is sitting in a little boat, and he has a paint can.
That's my number 2.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Such a crazy one shot. I don't know how they did that.
And it's even longer in the 53 version, so basically, to anyone listening who hasn't watched this, it's a scene where he sits in a canoe or something, and it's in this tiny boat, and beside him, I guess there's like some right on the shore. Good point. And the tide is coming in. He's sitting in there, and there's like some kind of seat in front of him that is having some kind of primer applied to it, I guess, because there is a paint can with a paintbrush in it, and he pulls the paintbrush out of the paint can and starts applying the primer or whatever, or the stain or whatever, to this piece of wood that is inside the boat. I don't exactly know what's going on there or why it's there. Point is, the tide comes in and it carries the paint can, and the paint can starts floating away in the tide, and he's not noticing it, and every once in a while he'll move his paintbrush over to the side of the boat where the paint can was, and he's not dipping it in anything, and then he's trying to apply it, and then the waves push the paint can back into place where he dips it again, and then he applies it, and then he continues to apply the primer.
It lands right in the spot where it was. It's crazy. I don't know if they guided it with like a string, or if they just did it enough where the tide put it back. It was. That's why it's on my list. That, like, it was funny, but I put it on there just because it was so impressive that they got that shot.
But then what's even cooler is they cut to a reverse angle, and the gag continues where it makes a whole journey around the boat onto the opposite side of it, where he all of a sudden looks over, the paint can's not there, looks to his right, and then it's there. And then he puts the paint can on this little piece of wood that he is applying stuff to, and sets it out of the canoe, and then the tide carries it back off the shore, around the boat, and onto the original side. It's really impressive.
Yeah. There's a lot of physical stunts that I'm impressed with him for, continuing in the Chaplin vein. Like, there's one where there's a tow truck towing his car, and this one caught me off guard probably more than anything in the whole thing. He's just trying to walk around the car. He steps on the cable right as the tow truck is pulling, and it becomes taut and launches him straight off into the river, or into the harbor, and he goes flying. Like, they had a harness on him, shoom, shot him into the harbor, and that was impressive because it was really him. You could clearly see it there was no cuts. But yeah, so that's my number 2 also. I also like, we can talk about this here because that is one that just continues going, because as he has to get up and go over here because that's where the paint can came around. He walks back over, he steps on the middle of his boat and cracks it. Then he gets in the boat still. I don't know why, but he still gets in the boat and he's out there rowing, and it just folds right in half. That was funny, and I love that being the end of the joke, and I think that was really funny. Then he comes back, a decade later, like I said, after seeing Jaws, and then the boat falls like this. He reshoots another scene where he's trying to get out, and it's like opening and closing like this, and then everyone thinks it's a shark, and they scream shark, and everyone runs off the beach. Which, even the first time before I knew that was added, I didn't like that joke. There's no way. They're like, he's so close to them. Like, there's no way he looks like a shark. Like, it's clearly a boat. They're like 10 feet away from it. Like, if that was going to work, it would have to be much further back. And I just don't like that he did like a parody scene. Like, that's the only thing that really feels like that. Everything else feels so like uniquely him. And so that, like, I've already mentioned that I didn't like that joke. I don't need to harp on it. But
I thought it was kind of funny. I didn't know it was a reshoot. That does sort of affect my enjoyment, because I was almost amazed where I was thinking, this feels like it predates Jaws. Like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
But I guess I'll say, regarding the restoration, you watch the 53 original theatrical cut, and then you watch the restored version. The restored version is like amazing. It looks a lot better. Like, the quality is, they clearly restored it.
Yeah, it's great.
And I can get into this a little bit later, but there were scenes where I was watching it going, okay, I know this has to be cut because the film is scratched up. And then there are other things where I'm like, oh, okay. And then there were other scenes where, when I watched the restored version, I was surprised that, oh, that scene's here? I thought that would have been cut. Oh, that scene's not here. I thought that would have been included. So that was kind of a cool compare and contrast thing. But when we did get to the gag with the shark, the film stock was all of a sudden much richer, much better preserved, looked. I think it is like the quality of the production is so much cleaner than it is anywhere else in the film. And I think that's maybe what you're picking up on.
Well, it's 25,
and you're right.
It's 25 years later, which
yes.
It's crazy that he thought to go back to his film 25 years later and edit it. But yeah, it's fine. It's a harmless joke, but it did take me out a little bit. What is your number 1? I'm curious if we'll have the same number 1 since we have the same number 2.
My number 1 is this big, long gag on top of a gag on top of a gag. Now, this would have been my number 1 if it was just the first part, but it keeps going on and it keeps making me laugh. Now, I don't know if I've really talked to you about this, but anybody who knows me in my life knows I've got car troubles. I have so many car stories throughout the years. And so my favorite character in this movie is Monsieur Hulot's car. That thing is hilarious. I love how loud and obnoxious it is. I love the opening bit. Like, this would have made my list if this last bit didn't happen. I love the part with the dog at the beginning. And in the way the last big gag we get with the car is like it's like the car's been done justice. It's like this is a sequel where they knew the car was the runaway hit. He has to give 2 passengers, these 2 women, one is the English woman, and he needs to give them a ride to this picnic that everyone else is at. And so but his car broke down on the side of the road. So he's underneath his car performing maintenance. and he's got his legs stretched out, and this really cool stunt where you see this car turning the bend, and then he just sort of, for a second, I like almost stood up. I'm like, his legs are going to get run over. And then you see his legs kick up as the car passes by. And I thought, he heard the car coming, but he didn't. So he steps up and then he removes the mat, and then he looks down and he realizes that the car that had passed by had left this like tire mark, and there's this break where his legs were, and he starts feeling his legs to think, well, hold on, are my legs broken? What's going on? And it's a really funny stunt involving his car. But then it keeps going on where he's starting to use the jack stand to try to jack up his car because he's got a flat tire. But then the scene keeps going on where he's putting the jack stand underneath the seat of his passengers, and he cranks up the jack. It lifts up one of his passengers, then he cranks it down, moves the jack over, jacks it up, and then it jacks the other passenger up, and then they start noticing it, because at first, when the first passenger gets jacked up, she's like, oh, look at the view. It's so nice up here. And then he jacks her down, and then the jack stand falls over, and then it's like a domino effect where like his car is in neutral, bumps into a car in front of it. That car then gets sent in one direction. He starts running after that second car. Then his car starts taking off without him noticing it. He notices the one car and is trying to run after the other car that's run away that he bumped into. And then that car finds its own natural way to a parking position. And he thinks, okay, it sorted itself out. Then he turns around, his car takes off, and then he starts running after it, but then it runs around a corner, and then dogs are chasing him away, and then his car's spare tire has a horn attached to it. It falls over, and as like the wheel is turning, the horn keeps getting hit, and it sounds like a duck. Yeah. And then this old man at a nearby mansion has this gun, and it starts bang, bang, thinking that there are ducks out flying that he can shoot. It is a great escalation event, and it's a great car sequence, and the car is just probably my favorite recurring gag. All the little things that they do with that car is wonderful, and it was the perfect way to send off that car, and since it's my favorite part of the movie, it's my number one favorite gag.
Oh, you said so much in there that I want to comment on. I'm going to try to get it all in, but the first thing you mentioned was when the car almost runs over his legs, it leaves tracks, and that's what's funny is because he sees the tracks go right to where his legs were and then keep going. This movie uses that a lot as a gag, like car tracks, footprints. Like he'll leave footprints all over the place. There'll be a scene where like he's hiding behind the coat rack because the owner of the hotel is like angry with him, and he finally goes behind the coat racks and he's not there, and then you look down and there's like footprints going all the way up the stairs, and then like his oar falls down like he just cartoon like Scooby-Doo ran up the stairs. And they do that a lot. Like there's one scene where the footprints go like in a weird circle, like he did this weird figure 8 run that we didn't get to see. But the other thing you mentioned is that the car is basically him and his car, like he's like the human personification of the car. Like you've got this because you didn't mention the car is so loud, it keeps backfiring, just keeps backfiring over and over. It's so loud. There's a running joke where every time he pulls back into the hotel at night, all the lights come on because he wakes everyone up in the whole hotel, and that keeps coming back. He's basically this guy who's like upsetting the established order and the peace everywhere he goes, and his car does the exact same thing, and I think it's really funny. I'm glad that you latched onto it so much because that's the first thing we see. Not the first thing, like I said, the train station, but he's a weirdo. He doesn't take the train. He doesn't take the bus like everybody else. He drives his beat up old car and like on the road and almost takes people out. There's a scene where a woman's walking across the road. He almost nails her and her dog, and she like freaks out, and he's like, oh, and he signals like this to her, which means go. So she walks across, and all of a sudden she's booking it down the hill because a bus almost hits her because the bus thought he was signaling to go around him. The car gets into a lot of stuff. You said your scene was like escalation, but your scene goes straight into my number one, which is the climax, which I think is hilarious and definitely made me laugh the most. And your scene and my scene are basically the climax. It just keeps building and building because those dogs that are chasing him as he's running away while the crazy guy's trying to shoot ducks, that's really a car horn, is he runs into this old shack which is just some old shack with a bunch of junk in it, and the dogs chase him into it, and he runs in there. While he's in there, he accidentally lights a bunch of fireworks, and they just start shooting off inside the shack, and he's trying to like open doors and windows so they go out, and he sets off this huge firework display that just keeps escalating, and he's trying to shut it down and just keeps getting worse. It eventually turns into like a full-scale assault on the hotel. It's like bombarding the hotel with fireworks, and it wakes everyone up in the hotel. And there's just a lot of clever little funny things as he's trying to put out the fire that I really liked. He first tries to fill it up, to cover it up with dirt, and he's throwing dirt, and then like the whole head comes off the shovel, and he just like throws the shovel at it. And he tries to do it with water, and he turns on the spigot, and then he can't find, because it's nighttime. I didn't say that, but it's nighttime. That's why he wakes everyone up in the hotel. He's trying to follow the hose to find the other end of it, and he comes right back to the thing that he just turned on, and he's like, and then he goes and follows it again. He finally gets to it with his bucket, and it's like a sprinkler system on this like big turning rig.
Because he's in like a cabbage.
Yeah,
he's like a cabbage
field. So it's like sprinkling. So he's like, he can't get water into the stupid bucket, and he's like chasing it around, trying to get water into it, and it's just getting worse and worse. He gets shot in the face. The actual Tati got shot in the face. You know when he's wearing that nose piece in the next scene?
Yeah.
Like he actually got burned. Because that's another crazy stunt. Like he's right next to the fireworks. They're like shooting off all around him. Like that scene. I mean, it's the climax of the film. It's an easy pick, I guess, but I think it culminated beautifully. We didn't talk about it, but this is like relatively soon post-war France, and that's kind of the whole point of it. Is like that's why that guy's talking about everything he did in the war, and it's kind of like people learning how to relax again and vacation together, and he's coming in and like literally bombarding the whole hotel. In the video essay, the guy talks about, he compares this to a Chaplin scene in The Great Dictator, where Chaplin films World War II as if it's a big amusement park, and in this goes the other way and films a nice fun firework display as if it's a full-scale like attack on the hotel. There's also a running joke where he keeps blasting a record player who Hulot does, and the record player is like triggered by the light switch, so they keep coming in and flicking the lights off because they're mad at him because he's disturbing them with his record player. At the very end, you find out as everyone's getting downstairs, and he's woken everybody up with a fireworks display. Everyone's downstairs. It's like a fire drill went off in a hotel or something. Everyone's in their pajamas. They're all downstairs. They're all turning on all the lights, and someone flips on the light with the music, and then it just starts blasting, and then everyone's just having fun. And it ends really nicely and sweetly, where everyone just has a good time, and they're not all angry with him for what he did. They are kind of angry with him, like I said, the next morning. The culmination of all of his shenanigans kind of wore on them too much, and no one will shake his hand. Everyone's like shaking hands and happy at the end, and everyone's just like, get away from us, and he has to go. He's cast out. He's sitting in the dunes with the children, just kind of messing with the sand, which is kind of sad.
Yeah. You talking about the sort of post-war people learning to relax again, I think that's actually maybe what the I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was not on my mind. I guess it should have been, because having an English woman there maybe says something about that, where she likes being with the French. She likes being here, you know what I mean, away from her home country. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's that kind of detail to kind of show a collection of Europeans coming together, where most of them are French, but you do have this person from afar. It should be noted that this actually was very, very popular when it came out, mm-hmm. not just in France, but also here in the States. It was nominated for Best Story and Screenplay at the Academy Awards.
Oh, wow.
It was nominated for the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is one of the only comedies to be nominated for that. The National Board of Review had it in 8th for the top foreign films of the year, and it actually ranks number 49 on Empire Magazine's list of the 100 best films of world cinema. I'm not sure when that list was made, but that's a pretty impressive, considering when you look at a lot of, I guess, just cinema in general, but also, world cinema. When we talk about greatness, comedy generally kind of gets the slip. And I think it's kind of the way comedy ages and preferences and all that. But people, when they think about substantial art, they think about, well, it's got to be this deep, meaningful, like thing, right? I know Gene Siskel was very aware of this. I can't remember if it was the 70s, 80s, or whatnot, but when Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel did like the best films of that decade, after they were all done, Gene Siskel turned to Roger Ebert and said, "I noticed none of the movies on your list were comedies. Why is that?" And Ebert was just kind of like, "I don't know. I just looked at my top 10 of every year and just kind of started from there myself." And I think what Siskel said there, when I was a teenager, that made a big impression on me in terms of the way we almost look at comedy as disposable. Even if it's like a great comedy, we lock it to a point in time, and we don't think of something as substantial. If something's substantial, it has to be substantial throughout all of time. And I think there's something to that. But this isn't The Godfather. This isn't, I guess, maybe to say, like, comparing it to other world cinema films, like, it's not Seven Samurai where it's this big sweeping epic. It's not this meditation on the anxieties of death and what comes after death that is like The Seventh Seal, or these other big milestones of world cinema. But I'm glad that there's room for Monsieur Hulot's Holiday, because it's really charming, and I think it captures a vacation and just a moment of the year, or just like a tradition that a lot of people have that we don't see in the movies all that often.
Yeah, I'm actually wearing the closest thing I have to a relevant shirt. This is my Waterwiz staff shirt from probably my favorite summer vacation movie, The Way, Way Back. I don't know if you've seen that film yet. Great movie. But yeah, to quote the youngins of today, this movie is a vibe.
Yes.
It absolutely succeeded in the reason he recommended this, to get us in the mood for summer, to get us in the mood for vacations, just for the beach. Halfway through this movie, my son actually turned to me and said, I wish I could go to the beach again, Daddy. And I was like, we're going to do it, man, because this movie, I'm in the mood. This movie is absolutely good for that. I think watching this at the beginning of the summer is a great tradition to have if you're in the mood. And it definitely has got me interested in checking out his other films. I know his next Monsieur Hulot film is Mon Oncle, and then I think Parade is the third one.
I can't. Playtime is one of them.
Playtime, that's what it is, which is supposedly his best. We kicked back and forth maybe doing that one for this video instead, because that's kind of his most critically acclaimed and stuff. But I'm glad we did this one, because
Me too.
This one is great too, and I think it's a perfect introduction because it is the first of that character. So yeah, I am so glad we did it. Thank you for joining me. Any other closing thoughts you had on this one, or can we let the people go? I was going to say under an hour, but we are well over an hour.
I'm glad I watched it. I want to watch the 53 version in its entirety sometime soon. I guess one thing I should say, I just remembered something I wanted to maybe mention. That recurring gag you had mentioned earlier, where every night after it's nighttime, everyone goes to sleep, there's always some loud thing to happen that you cut to the exterior of that house, and then lights start coming on.
Yeah.
It's really funny.
It's kind of like a Psycho shot. It's just like a back off, straight on shot of the house. And it happens every time. I think it might happen every night. I didn't count, but like,
I think it does.
It keeps coming back. He keeps waking everybody up.
And that's why the climax is so great, is it's just all of the noises at once. It's the loud music. It's the fireworks. I like the firework that flies into the ex-captain's house or his room and explodes. But there's a scene early on where he goes with some teenagers who are like hikers or something.
Yeah.
And he like carries like one of their bags up. And the first time I watched it, it was such a disposable gag with these characters we'd never seen before, we never see again. And I thought, well, this is going to be one of the things where if you have 12 minutes to cut, this is what you cut. And they didn't. So I was a little surprised that was still included. But I think by the time I got to the end and I realized every night we need to have something waking these people up, that's why they do that. But I also like the kind of sweet way we end off the everyone turning on their lights gag, which is we cut to Martine, and she never wakes up. Everyone else is waking up, and she's still in bed, fast asleep. And I think that's something kind of sweet.
Thank you for that, because that is the one scene I wish wasn't cut in the 62 edit. In the original 53 version, you didn't get here, but the very last scene before we cut back to Hulot and he drives away is scene of Martine in the train leaving with her mother or whoever that is with her, and her mother's going through pictures, and she's like, oh, another Monsieur Hulot, and she shows it to her, and she laughs. And she just has like a nice laugh because he made her trip special, and I don't know why he cut that. It's very strange.
Yeah, I actually, speaking of which, I think the two of them dancing scene is like the perfect encapsulation of this movie, where it's like, I wish like that. So you have that scene, and it's really sweet. You have these two people. The music starts up. They both got dressed up in these goofy pirate costumes, and they start dancing. And someone notices it, and it's a nice, sweet little scene. And in my head, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be just amazing if this old man turned to his wife and said, "Come over here," and the two of them started dancing outside, to kind of mirror the couple dancing inside. But that doesn't happen.
Yeah, he never goes sentimental.
But it's okay that it doesn't happen. There is a part of me that does kind of wish this would be like a great movie if it went that little extra mile in like these kind of big scenes. Like, like if the emotional element was like, you don't even expect it to hit you as hard as it does.
Like Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin
exactly.
does go there.
Yes, precisely. And like I always have to bring this movie up. Like in Sunrise, the beginning of Sunrise literally starts off in a train station where it says like summertime,
and it's
vacation
like,
time. I was thinking Sunrise off the top, but that's a movie where like it does go those extra miles. And even though that's not a comedy, the way this is a comedy, I do kind of wish, like we were talking about with Chaplin, it does sort of have like those emotional moments that grab you. And even in a movie I don't love, like Modern Times, sorry everybody, I don't love that movie, the ending of that still kind of surprises me with how emotionally invested I am. And I think, yeah, you're right, they shouldn't have cut that scene with Martine at the train station, because if they included that, I think that would have been kind of a nice little linchpin. In the restored version that we have, though, I really like the way it ends, where there's a little postcard shop. Somebody's closing it up, and then you see Monsieur Hulot take off, and then a little postcard stamp appears in the corner as it freeze frames.
Yeah.
And I thought that... Mwah,
see, that's why editing your films is okay, because he did improve on it. But it's a catch-22, because like I said, there's another scene that I liked that it got cut. So what are you gonna do? I get the score and I get that perfect little ending, but I lose one scene and I get a shark scene. So.
And it's restored, DJ.
Oh yeah, it looks gorgeous. I'm absolutely buying. I don't know about you. I'm buying the box set. In July, when we get there, I will be checking out all of his films. Connor is coming to visit me in 2 weeks. In July, we will be going crazy with the Criterion content. We're going to be going to a lot of different Barnes & Nobles around here and picking up a lot of stuff. So stay tuned if you're here for that. Subscribe for more Criterion content. Like this video if you like these kind of discussion videos. I know a lot of you are here for the collection updates and more specific to collecting stuff, but we just love doing these. So even if no one's watching, this is how we get to discuss films together, and this is how I get to learn a lot about films, because I do more preparation for this probably than anything else I do. This is fun to check out the bonus features and help these films stick into my memory a little bit better than just watching a different film every night and they kind of go away. These ones that we talk about in such great detail have been sticking with me a lot better, and I've been enjoying that, and that's better for me. So as long as you'll do this show with me, we'll keep it going until you're like a famous, director, and I can't get time with you anymore, and all your films are going to festivals and stuff. But
oh shucks. Well, look at all of these Criterions behind me.
Yep.
I think on Letterboxd I've seen like 20% of the Criterion films I own. So I love doing this show because it allows me to actually start knocking them off. But whatever you guys want to see us cover next, the next movie is set in stone. We're actually going to be, I'm not going to tell you guys what it is, but it is actually an English language movie, and not just that, but an American movie. Oh my gosh. Oh, whoa. And it's actually by like a filmmaker people like talk about a lot, So as much as I like, maybe informing people on Jacques Tati or Carol Zeman, as you have really, shared with me, it'll be kind of nice to maybe talk about this, an early, I think, masterpiece by like one of the masters of cinema. But that 7th Criterion Corner, we got a blank space. So if any of you guys want to mark something down on a request, we'll take it under consideration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I appreciate, even if you don't put a request, any kind of comment you guys leave, I definitely appreciate it. That's what makes this so fun. Sorry, it just had like a creepy Scooby-Doo door. But yeah. But yeah, thanks for all the comments you leave. I love reading over those. I had a great conversation that kept going with the gentleman Eric who recommended this film, and he taught me a lot more about Jacques Tati. And I just love learning from you guys, and I love having those conversations. So thanks for everything you do, and I will be back with another video real soon.